It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. In the latest twist in Brazil's spiraling political crisis, Valdir Naranjo, Speaker of the lower house of Brazil's Congress, on Monday annulled the impeachment vote that they had taken a few weeks ago on President Dilma Rousseff, and then he backtracked on his decision in less than 24 hours. The Brazilian Senate is expected to take a vote on Wednesday to remove President Dilma from office while the proceedings of her impeachment is underway. Now, she has simply been charged with alleged corruption and alleged financial statement misrepresentations. And so many people are questioning whether this is legitimate ground for the impeachment proceedings itself. On to talk about the latest developments related to this story is Professor Boaventura de Sousa Santos. He's professor of sociology at the University of Coimbra in Portugal, and he is distinguished legal scholar at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Professor, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
So let's start with a quick rundown on what happened in the last 24 hours.
Yes, the new Speaker of the House took this, kind of surprising decision to annul the decisions of the lower house in the previous sessions, invoking some procedural errors that nullified, in fact, the decision and sent a message to the Senate saying precisely that. And therefore, the impeachment procedures should go back to the lower house. Of course, it was very surprising, and in fact, he didn't even consult his colleagues at the coordinating board of the lower house. So only on that basis, it's already a little bit problematic whether the speaker could do the way he did. And second of all, he did that at the point in time in which the process was already in the Senate. So the president of the Senate just said, well, you have no jurisdiction over the process anymore. The impeachment process is now in the House, in the Senate, and we'll go ahead with that. Okay, there are some legal intricacies here, which eventually can go up to the Supreme Court. But this case shows basically the state of exception that exists now in Brazil. The institutions are, in a sense, in a situation of almost chaotic type of deliberations that make it very difficult to predict what is going to happen. And probably the only institution that still keeps some calm and some idea of the rule of law is the Federal Supreme Court. Even the Supreme Court has already been, having some behavior that is doubtful, particularly some of the public declaration by some of the judges. But it looks like that the Senate is going ahead with impeachment. In fact, the Speaker of the lower house annulled his own decision, which is also a little bit almost comic and bizarre in a sense. And therefore, everything now seems to be back on track. That is to say, this parliamentary coup, there is no question in my mind that this is a parliamentary coup because, after all, Dilma may be a very incompetent president, but for that, she should, of course, be defeated in the next elections. She has not committed any crime of responsibility that would justify the impeachment. As a matter of fact, I think that we are going to have a case in which probably the most honest politician in Latin America is going to be impeached by the most corrupt politicians in Latin America. So it's a bit tragic what's going on in Brazil now.
And you mentioned judges who had publicly come out. What are they saying?
Well, what they are saying is basically that there is no coup, that there is, the normal the democratic development. And in fact, in the end, there will be a trial, which will start as soon as the Senate decides to go ahead with the impeachment trial. They have 180 days, 6 months, to decide. In fact, this process is presided over by the president of the Supreme Court. So it is a mixture of the Supreme Court and the Senate. and they are going to invite people and experts, international experts, and so on, to decide. And of course, President Dilma will be suspended. So I think all the judges of the Supreme Court, some of them, they have been saying things, but some of these are basically on the idea that we, Supreme Court, are not going to intervene in this process because it's a lawful process. But of course, we are going to make sure that all the procedures are respected. So on the procedural grounds, we can intervene, not on the merit. That has been so far the main idea that is coming out of the court. The current president, Lewandowski, is a very important and very respected judge in Brazil. And so the next president, which is Carmen, she's a woman, is also highly respected. I know both of them very well, and they are respected judges. So we'll see if the Supreme Court, keeps democracy on track, which is basically what we need now in Brazil.
Professor, are you saying that even if the Senate takes a vote to, I guess, temporarily suspend Dilma Rousseff's presidency, put somebody else in place, and decides to proceed with the hearings related to the impeachment, that particular process might be intervened on by the Supreme Court?
Of course, the defense lawyer for president, which is the lawyer for the union, has already indicated that he may bring a complaint to the Supreme Court, precisely on the same grounds that he presented to the lower house. The idea that in fact there were some procedural errors that were committed during the impeachment process. I think basically the idea that the vote on the lower house was based on everything except the legal grounds for impeachment, because none of the deputies mentioned actually the questions of this supposed crime, which is some illegality that all the presidents have been committing. Is a kind of a budgetary type of manipulation that they do, and they have been doing, and the governments have been doing as well. So nothing of that was discussed in the lower house. So the lawyer for President Dilma is going to present this in Supreme Court. Supreme Court may decide to go ahead with that the Senate should go ahead with the trial, and so now within this period, the vice president, the current vice president, will take office. It will be the new president, and now there is some uncertainty about what President Dilma will do, because she has been saying that she will not renounce. So she'll be suspended, she will stay. Other people, myself included, probably would think that probably the best move to sustain democracy in Brazil would be for her to renounce, showing that in fact there is a parliamentary coup and she's the most lawful person here. And she renounces, but before doing that, she should send a proposal for a constitutional amendment to the Congress to call for new elections in the fall. Because that's now, I think, the struggle from now on will be, I think it should be based, and most of the social movements and progressive forces are thinking along these lines, should be focused on the legitimacy of the new government. And therefore, it is important that President Dilma had renounced, and the new president is illegitimate because he was never put to a vote, and the coup, the parliamentary coup, is still going on. And so calling for new elections, that's the only way to restore democracy, is new elections very soon. And I think probably, well, that's probably a long shot, but even a constitutional assembly to reform the political system so that these things, this corrupt political system, is really completely, eliminated and replaced by a more healthy political system.
Professor, I thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll be following this situation and hope to have you back on very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
And thank you for joining me on the Real News Network.